Okay, guys, it's back to history lessons again. Make sure, as usual, before we start, make sure you have your notes. For this one, we are looking at chapter 4.1, okay, which is the outbreak of World War II in Europe. If you don't have it, please download it from Google Classroom, and I've also made it available in my Google Drive. Alright. Remember the slides themselves are also available. Of course, writing materials. Make sure you're comfortable. You're in a good condition to study. Okay, and of course, make sure that you do get some exercise. After this, please go and do something. Go and skip, blank something. Okay, stay healthy. Okay, so we're gonna look at the outbreak of World War II in Europe. Outbreak, we're talking about the start of the war. Okay, this is important. We are always looking at cause and effect. Okay, and so what are we looking at? We are looking at today. We're going to look at the weakness of the League of Nations. Remember that these are the three factors: the weakness of the League, Hitler's expansion, the policy of appeasement. How do they all contribute to the outbreak of World War II? That is the cause and effect that we want to talk about. So as we go through today's content, remember that we're trying to figure out how come the war started. Okay. Remember what is the trigger event of the war? It is September 1939. Okay, Germany invades Poland. Okay, this is the trigger. So of course the question is, what led to this condition, to this situation of Germany invading Poland? Okay, so the first point, in fact the only point that we're going to cover today, is the weakness of the League of Nations. Let me remind you again, the League of Nations, what is it designed for? It's designed for collective security as well as disarmament. Okay, and obviously the League is meant to stop any kind of this kind of conflict. However, it does not work. Okay, we are going to look at how. Those of you who remember Jimmy the Camel, I would say that the weakness of the League of Nations is a contributing factor rather than the underlying factor. Okay, so this is just a quick recap on the League of Nations. We know that it's supposed to prevent another war, but unfortunately it did not. Okay, and we know that there were some successes. In fact, we did an essay on this, right? But by and large, it was not very effective. Why? There were structural flaws. Okay, it's associated with the Treaty of Versailles. It means what? It means that people didn't think of it very much because people agreed that the treaty was unfair and they did not want to associate themselves with this, oh so sorry, unfairness. Okay, and also there was a lack of commitment from the great powers. Okay, what does that mean? It means that, oh dear, it means that the great powers who were supposed to back up the League, right, they didn't support action of the League. Okay, so when with all this, that is why the League did not work. So actually we have already covered this in chapter 1.2, but we want to apply this understanding to the situation in Europe in the 1930s. Okay, now first we're going to talk about disarmament. Okay, what is disarmament? It is the process of putting down weapons. And why is this relevant? Obviously, to start a war, you need weapons. Okay, Germany has tanks, soldiers, so on and so forth. And we remember that Germany's military forces were limited. However, it did not work. Okay, why? Because the major powers did not agree. Okay, so the example that we can use is this thing, disarmament conferences. Okay, I would like you all to pay attention to the World Disarmament Conference in 1932 that happened in Geneva. Okay, so textbook page 110. If you're not sure, pause now and open up your history textbook, the Sec 3 history textbook. Turn to page 110. On the bottom left hand of the page, you will be able to see all the examples there. Okay, so if you look at the last point on this slide, you should know the different conferences. What I would advise you to do is to memorize one success and one failure, one outright failure, okay, in which the nations simply refused to disarm. A success, maybe it might be a limited success, where they were able to achieve some degree of disarmament. Okay, So please pause now. Make sure you know at least one example each. Okay. So now we know what disarmament is. Now we're going to look at why disarmament failed. What is the cause of disarmament failing? Okay, simply because, as we have talked about before, the major powers. Okay, so a disarmament conference works like this: country A, B, C sit down together and they say, okay, guys, we are going to reduce the number of weapons that we have. All right, and in order to do this, we'll all put down weapons at the same time. Okay, however, this means that they have to actually put down their weapons, and there is no guarantee that other people are going to disarm as well. Okay, so as you can imagine, nobody wants to actually give up their ability. Let's say I'm country A and I agree to disarm. Okay, but I am still suspicious of country B and C. If I disarm, it means that I'm now vulnerable to country B and C. Therefore, I will not disarm because they want to protect themselves and they want to defend their own interests. Okay, so point two here, we unwilling to place their national interests. Say again. None of the great powers are willing to prioritize international interests over their own. Okay, this is why they're not willing to compromise. They're not willing to work together. This is why the League of Nations fails. Okay, this we already know. Okay. So let's take one step back. And this slide, what am I looking at? We are looking at what is the overall effect. So we know why disarmament does not work. How did it then affect the League of Nations? Okay, obviously, what it means is that the great powers, right? They do not think the League is effective. Okay. Therefore, they will not respect the League, and it means also that they will go and search for their own solutions. Okay, so this is something that is going to play into the third factor. Okay. So now what we're going to do is that we've understood what the problem with the League of Nations. Now I'm going to go through an example. This is a very important example. It's called the Abyssinian Crisis. Now, Abyssinia is actually the old name for Ethiopia. I'm going to show you a map on the next slide. Just stay with me, okay? What is this an example of? It is an example of the League not being able to resolve conflicts. Okay? It is also an example of appeasement, but right now I just want you to think about how does this example reflect why the League is not effective, okay? Okay, so if you look at the second slide here, this provides you the link to what is actually happening when it comes to Hitler. Let me tell you a broad story. Basically, when Hitler sees that the League can't deal with conflict, then he becomes braver because he guesses that nobody in the League is going to stop him. Okay? His perception of the League as weak will make him more willing to be aggressive. All right? That is an important relationship. If you need to, please pause, play it back, write it down. All right? Okay, map. Just to contextualize, where is Germany? Is here. Italy, just south of it. Okay. Britain, France. Britain is here. Okay, this is Britain. In case you don't know that the UK is Britain. Okay. This chunk here is the USSR. All right. But now we are talking about Abyssinia. Where is Abyssinia? Abyssinia is actually the old name for Ethiopia. And what is it all the way in Africa? In case you didn't know that, called this continent here, ladies and gentlemen, is Africa. And this sea is the Mediterranean. Okay? Hooray. Geog lesson 101. Okay, anyway, back to Ethiopia. Ethiopia, it was a colony, and who did it belong to? Okay, this is going to be an issue which we're going to look at. So just so you know where Abyssinia is. Okay? Now, Italy, right, they invaded Abyssinia because, resources and so on and so forth. So by right, one sovereign country, that means they can rule themselves, invading another, this is international conflict. And who is supposed to step in? The League of Nations is supposed to step in. They're supposed to stop the Italians, okay? However, what happens, okay? The League is actually, remember who the League depends on? Who are the major players? Britain and France, right? So if you look at this, right, Britain and France were allied with Italy. Because of this, they decided, hey, I think let's not stop Italy. So they used their influence in the League to not stop Italy. Okay, so clearly the great powers are more effective than the League. Okay, I would like you to look at page 112 to 113. Please pause now and go and have a look at it, because that will give you an overview of the events of the Abyssinian crisis. All right, when you understand that, then we will be able to proceed. You will understand what is going on much better. Okay. So what happens, what we see is that at this point, I'm assuming that you've already read through the textbook. What we see is that Italy, right, was actually able to get away with taking Abyssinian territory. And why was this so? Because Britain and France actually agreed that they could take the territory. Okay? So basically, right, Britain and France just hand-waved Italy away. So what is the implication of this crisis? Okay? How can you make use of this crisis as evidence? Firstly, it shows that the League failed to control Italy. Okay? By extension, it means it sends the message that the League can't stop conflict. And secondly, it also shows that its two most powerful members, Britain and France, they are ignoring the League. What is the message that is being sent? That the League is not effective at all. Okay? Side point, which is not super critical to this analysis, but good to know that because of this, Hitler will become closer to Mussolini, who is the Italian dictator. Okay? So basically, this is how you can see it. The League of Nations fails to stop a conflict. That is why people think that it is not effective. So when they think that, it's like this, right? If I'm a thief and I see that there's a policeman, I won't go and steal something. But after some observation, if I see that the policeman is really ineffective, that 5 other thieves have gotten away with thievery and the policeman did nothing, I am going to do that as well. So if you apply the same concept here, aggressors, okay, if you don't know, please go and find out what this means. Aggressors basically means the country which is taking an offensive action, okay? If I am Germany and I see that Italy managed to get away with taking Ethiopian territory, doesn't that mean that if I go and take some other territory, the League is not going to stop me as well? Okay, that is how we get to this point. The first point leads to the second, okay, where other aggressor countries, aggressor nations will not hesitate to expand, which is actually, this is what Germany did, okay? Eventually, war will break out because basically the policeman is not effective, okay? So here are some questions which you should test yourself. You should know what the answers to these questions are. The first two are content questions, okay? The real question is, after you have this, in what way are you going to use this evidence, okay? And since the League of Nations was formed by the great powers, why were they unwilling to support the League if that is something that they came up with? Of course, you need to talk about priorities, okay? Before I end, I just would like to remind all of you that if you are going to do a piece of homework, please do not copy. Please read my very long letter to you on why copying is not useful at all. Okay, it really slows down your learning. You are not benefiting at all from it. Okay, use your own words. If you do not know how to rephrase, use a dictionary. Okay, so that's the end. Here is the riddle of the day. What starts with T, ends with T, and is full of tea? It is a teapot. Ha ha. Go and order some bubble tea for yourself.